What's up, mountain bikers? Jeff Bryant's here with a review of the Specialized Enduro. I'm going to level with you guys right at the top of this review. If you are looking for a versatile trail bike, this is not for you. This bike is very purpose-built, dare I say, specialized. Don't worry, I'll have more dad jokes as this goes on. This bike is really the culmination of what high levels of athleticism and purpose-built, between the tape driven technological advancement can produce. I love racing. I've raced for 20 years, and the sport of enduro has changed a lot over the last 10 years, which is really when it came to the United States. It was first kind of this sport where you could take your trail bike and go to a race, and we're just going to have a good old time, drink beer right at the top, and then ride down some fun trails and only time the downs. I guess that's what still happens in enduro, but the downhills have gotten incredibly gnarly. They're far more akin to like World Cup downhill tracks than they are, a cross-country track to the bottom, if you will. And that's good. I mean, it makes the sport more exciting, and it really has become its own beast in and of itself. So it's no surprise that the athletes that are really good at this have driven bike development that has resulted in bikes like the Enduro here. So what you're ending up with is a bike that is no longer a trail bike that you can race. It is a race bike built for racing. And I want to be really clear about that right off the top of this review. If you take nothing else from this, know that. This is not a bike that I would put as my one bike to do everything unless I live in a place that all I'm doing is riding up a mountain and then down the gnarliest type descents around. If you want to go on big rides and you want to ride kind of mellow trails and have fun doing that as well, you're probably going to find better options. If you're looking for a really versatile bike, you're going to find better options. I bought this bike in October of last year. I paid $5,500 for it. There's kind of a trade thing going on, but whatever. For all intents and purposes, I paid retail. And the value is not very good. I'm just going to just straight up and say it. It's not terrible, but you're getting kind of low-end wheels, low-end drivetrain, low-end brakes, X-Fusion dropper, in-house parts, okay middle-of-the-road Lyric, and a Super Deluxe out back. But here's the thing. GX drivetrain works really well for me. Kodar brakes I have no complaints with. The frame is what I really wanted. I like the Super Deluxe rear shock. And as a racer, money's not to say it doesn't matter, but you're spending so much traveling to races, and it's kind of what makes you tick. So an extra $100 here, $1,000 here, it sucks, but it's just part of the sport. And compared to other forms of racing, it's chump change. It's nothing. So again, it's kind of eye of the beholder. I'd rather buy the bike that's going to give me the best chance on Saturday or Sunday, even if it's going to cost me more, than I would skimp there and just complain all the time. But we're racers, we're going to complain anyway. I also knew I was going to switch a lot of the parts as is, just because that's racing. What works for you, what doesn't. There's always parts you want to try that are never going to come on any sort of build. And that for me was the flex bar. I tried 38. I tried a coil out back, all sorts of stuff. We'll get into that in a minute. So I'm not reviewing this as a package. I just want to be clear about what I think of the value. So I'll just jump right into the climbing part of this bike. It's a very good climbing bike, considering one big problem. It's very heavy. 37 pounds the way mine was set up, 38 pounds. This actually isn't an outlier for me. All my enduro bikes are somewhere between 35 and 40 pounds. And actually, when I had like real tires on this, and the coil and the 38 and the flex bar, I did have the scales tip 40 pounds. That was with like a pound of tools in the swap box. By the way, swap box is amazing. The SWAT little stem tool, amazing. So these are two other things in the value proposition. Other bikes don't offer these things. This does. Specialized does kind of the details really well now. So again, I'm not going to get too far down that rabbit hole. This isn't a direct-to-consumer kind of value. It's something else. Back to climbing. It was pretty efficient. The kinematics are good. The anti-squat's good. And with the shock locked out, it's not like a true lockout. It still moves. It just would tractor up stuff that kind of blew my mind. I actually cleaned one trail locally that I've never cleaned before on this bike. I'm a pretty strong climber, and it's a short climb, but it's very steep with a couple sections that are just brutal. And I was shocked that this was the bike I was able to clean it on. And I think a lot of it, too, is tires. You run gnarly or grippier tires on your enduro bike than like your trail or cross country bike, but I think it speaks well to how well the bike goes uphill. Just give yourself a little extra time, sit back, spin, and if you have big days, just know they're gonna feel like big days. You're not gonna like get through the flats quickly on this thing. You're just gonna kind of do it, just kind of keep going. But that's not what we're here to really talk about. What everybody wants to know is, how did this bike go downhill? Well, it's no surprise. Everybody has basically said the same thing. It's a beast going downhill. I'm going to try to focus on some things that people maybe missed or reviewers missed. There's a bunch of reasons I think this bike goes downhill really well. First of all, Specialized has taken a lot of time to kind of tune the chassis. So it's very stiff. It gives a very confidence-inspiring feel. The 170 mil of rear suspension feels like even more. So they did a good job there. The second thing they did an amazing job with is the axle path. So it's not straight up and down like a lot of FSR bikes were in the past. It's more a little rearward. It doesn't need an idler pulley, but it goes back and then up. Now, I'm not unfamiliar with this. Back when I was a senior in high school and had massively delusional race dreams, I had a guy by the name of Alex Morgan build a downhill bike for me called the BCD Inedible. This was a model he had. It had an idler pulley and was a very rearward axle path downhill bike. And I could tell right away this thing was light. It was probably just as much weight as this bike. And it would plow through square-edged hits unlike anything I've ever ridden. If you think about it, the wheel is able to get out of the way of the obstacle in that it just doesn't go up, but it actually acts more in the vector of the force path. And all of those are words that I never use and probably makes no sense to a real engineer. But square-edged hits, rocks, roots, that sort of thing, this axle path definitely does a better job of. So when pointed in a straight line through chundery terrain, no question about it, especially with the 38 up front, it was the best enduro bike I've ever ridden. 29-inch wheels, a lot of travel, stiff, stout, not too much so that it's deflecting all over the place. Just an amazingly well thought out bike. And on top of that, it has a handling package, geometry package to really match that. I don't want to get into the geometry like number by number. I don't think that does us a lot of good. But what I will say is this bike has a very balanced feeling. I wasn't on the extra large. I was on, I think, the S4. They do a different sizing now. So it wasn't the super long one. I think the reach of this one's like a 480 right in there. For my 6'2 build frame, whatever, it's about perfect. It put me very well situated between the two wheels. I never felt like I had to like really get on the front of the bike, which is a problem in longer sizes usually. I could kind of ride through my legs, and I never felt a ton of push from the front tire, that's a really big positive thing I can say about any frame. And a lot of the reason for that is they balanced the bike well using a chainstay that I would say is long enough for this style of riding and this kind of bike. I would actually say they could go a hair longer. But again, I was going to say I'm not getting into the geometry spec or number by number. I'm really just trying to tell you how the bike handles overall. I was able to corner better on this bike than probably any bike I've ridden in the last few years in this category, or maybe ever. Let's say ever. And a lot of the reason for that is it offers a ton of grip. So not only does it put you in a good space or place to just rail corners, but the tires just stay glued to the ground a little better, so they're not sliding as much. If they're not sliding, then you're going to corner better. So there's that. On top of that, because you have so much confidence in a straight line, I was braking a little later, and my times just were faster. I didn't get a race this year because there's really no racing. But Strava doesn't lie. I've got that to look at, and I've got tracks around here I can compare and look at my times on, and I'm faster on this bike than any bike I've ever ridden in my life. So I think that's the best compliment I can give to a kind of purpose-specific race bike. Let's turn to the suspension, a little more nuanced take on it. So I tried this bike with a coil that I can't quite talk about yet, a Super Deluxe, and then a Super Deluxe with Megneg. They all work very well. I would say any coil shock's going to be probably more well-suited to racing. It's more business-like, offers probably the most grip, but also is probably the most boring. It just kind of does its thing. When you load the shock, you don't get quite as much pop out of it, as much as zing, for lack of a better word, out of it. Whereas the air shocks are a little more poppy. You can set the bike up to be a little more playful, which can be fun considering how much travel it has. When I added Megneg, I actually had to back down how progressive it was, because it was too progressive with no bands, and I ended up kind of in the middle. If you know how MagNeg works, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, then I'm speaking Chinese to you, so sorry on that. Overall, though, you can kind of set this bike up either way, and what I thought was really cool is if I did set it up to be a little more playful, I found myself trying to double stuff that I usually wouldn't even attempt, or maybe ever would attempt. And the reason is like, A, it would get in the air really well, and then B, if I shorted something, I had all the travel to feel like I'd come out of it on two wheels. And so far, knock on wood, I did. So that was awesome. As far as jumping performance otherwise, no surprise, it does it very well. You can send stuff to flat if you want. You can just be stupid on this bike, and you're probably going to be okay. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about the descending performance, but when I go to like a normal trail ride, let's say with like girls, no, that's a mean thing to say, with new riders, new girl riders, how about that? Girls rip, by the way. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying that maybe you just met a girl on Tinder and you want to take her for a mountain bike ride, not that I've ever done this, you're going to probably end up on a mellower trail, and this bike's really boring, like the date. Like she probably thought I was, because I just wanted to talk about bikes, and that doesn't work. That's a pro tip, by the way. It's free. So, you know, if you're riding a lot of normal cross-country trails and you want something you can do everything with, you're better off looking elsewhere, especially if you're just racing for fun a few times a year. But like I said, if you're looking for a tried-and-true race bike, this is your bike, and you're just going to deal with having a boring time on mellow trails. I could literally sit down through sections of trail that I would kind of be not on edge on my spur or something, but a lot more dialed in on. You know, like I could like text, or I could do like whatever. It's just the bike is incredibly good at smoothing out trail, and that makes single track that's smooth seem boring, frankly. You just don't get a lot of energy out of it. It's just kind of there it is. So that aside, let's get into problems. I don't call that a problem, by the way. That's just kind of the nature of enduro bikes at this point. It's like taking a downhill bike on a cross-country ride. It's just kind of boring. So the problems I had, first, like I said, values maybe not quite there. Second, I did get the bike to creak, and there's like 9,000 pivots. So, you know, if that happens, kind of a bummer. But in my experience, it's actually all from one pivot over and over, which was the main pivot. So that's good. It's really easy to service and access. It's actually easy to swap the shock on this bike too, which I'll give them kudos there. The third thing is I wish they would have done a 170 dropper, not a 150. I actually love that X-Fusion dropper. It's super clean, works really well, light lever action, no problems with that dropper, but I just wish it was a longer one. And then, you know, I hope next year they do put a 38 on it. I hope the wheels are better. I did have to warranty the wheels, but they were awesome as far as how they warranted. I had one wheel that needed warranting. They gave me two. They let me keep the one that was basically broken, but that's still cool for spokes and parts and whatever. So the customer service side of things, I give two huge thumbs up. I also had I've got a sticky code rear caliper. I could probably get it away. It's not terrible. And my GX derailleur is creaking like crazy, and I can't seem to fix it. This is all just from over 100 hours of use, and boy, kind of every bike does this at this point for me. So I don't know what to say either way as far as that goes. But yeah, overall, it is a beast of a bike. If you are a privateer racer, I would suggest not taking any sponsorship, because you have to ride crappy parts, and buying this bike. Like if you're 19 years old and you want to give it a go, buy this bike, put good tires on it, put cush core in it, put good suspension up front, and rip. Like, this is going to give you the best shot, in my opinion, at winning races. I don't think there's a better bike out there, especially, like I said, if you're going to go to like regional races where they're going to throw cross-country stages at you, this might not be your ticket. If you want to really see what you got, see if you can race at the EWS level, there's not a better bike on the planet in my mind. This is the best bike you can buy. Who else is this for? You live in Whistler, you live in Morzine, you live somewhere where there's like lots of gnarly trails and you still want something you can pedal around. This is on a short list, you know, like it's this, Nomad, Torque, stuff like that. This just has 28-inch wheels, which I friggin' love. So this is a bike that I bought in October of last year. I have no thoughts on selling it. The only way I'd sell this bike is to buy another one, and considering how expensive they are and how big of a loss I'd take, highly doubt I'm going to sell it. So I'm actually going to ride this bike for a second year. I never do that. I always flip a bike every year, partially just for depreciation, partially because there's always something better, partially just because I do product reviews and I love reviewing stuff. So that's a really positive thing I can say. I would encourage anybody, like I said, that fits the bill, go buy this bike. You're not going to regret it. Cheers, guys. I really appreciate all the support, as always. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, whatever, throw them in the comments. I've got a lot more I could say about this bike, but let's be honest, we're 15 minutes in. That's a wrap.